This is lesson 7, and we're going to be working with a capacitor. We're also going to be talking about an inductor, but we're not going to actually do much yet till several lessons later. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a circuit and then kind of how I'm going to connect it. And I decided to go ahead and connect this one because it takes a little bit of time to think through and make sure that I have everything in the right place. So I thought I would just go ahead and connect it and then slowly explain what's connected when Adrian zooms in on the circuit board. But what we're going to do is we're going to have a capacitor, and you notice that I specifically have not said what a capacitor is or does, and that's okay because that's kind of the whole point of this, is to observe some things and see if you can figure out what it actually does. And I'm sure some of you probably already know something about this. But we're going to have a capacitor, and we're going to have it so we can connect one side or connect it to a power supply and a light bulb if we move the switch over to position A. And then if we want to see what happens without the battery or without the power supply, then we can move the switch to position B. And these are my light bulbs. So you'll have a light bulb, and I believe those are number 41s. I also thought I would bring an actual single pole double throw switch. Now this is not what we're going to be using because there's a switch built into the circuit board, but you can't see where anything's connected in that. So I thought I would bring one. And if you look at it kind of here, there are 3 connections. There's a bar in the middle. This is called a pole. It's a single pole, so there's only one of these. It's a double throw because you can connect it to one side or to the other side. A single pole, single throw would be just a normal switch. But with a double throw, you can connect the switch, move the pole to one side, and then you make a connection, which would be here. And then if you want to connect over there, then you would raise this up and move it over there, and that would make the connection around that way. So in a lab here, when we do this experiment or something similar, we actually use these. Okay, so what I've done is I've found the switch on the circuit board, and it is, and Adrian is going to zoom in on the circuit board in a little bit, but I wanted to explain on the board. It's S9. It's S9. And for the way it's connected to the rest of the circuit board, I'm going to kind of be looking at it sideways or somewhat from the end of the circuit board so that we can match, or sort of match, our circuit that we're going to construct with what we would construct if we were just doing it with the regular wires and without the circuit board. So what we have, you will notice this red line here. This line does not exist on your circuit board. That is a mistake. So when they were painting all these things on the black panel there, they did not paint a white line for this. I was going to try to make some kind of a marker and mark it on there before I sent them out, and I didn't get around to doing that. But if you look at the manual, I think it does show a line here. And there has to be a line here. So if we look at this, we have several holes here, so you could connect several things if you needed to. But this wire, this white line, connects to the right side of this switch. This little black region here is a knob or something that's sticking up, and you move it over to the left side or to the right side. There's really not a good spot in the middle to have in the middle position, so we're going to just have it on one side or the other. So we have this row of holes. Anything that's connected there is connected to this side of the switch. I've labeled this B, so this is comparable to our B position if we were constructing this circuit. Then there's actually two rows here in the middle that are connected to each other. That's what this little, on the circuit board, it's a white line, means that these two are connected to each other. So what I've done is just draw from here over to the middle. And that is equivalent to right here. We have a middle line that goes up to the middle of the switch. Then we have this last row of holes, and if you follow the white line there, it goes over here and up here and around to position A. And so that's equivalent to some region here that's connected to this side over here. So what we have to do is to insert all of these things over here to make the circuit that we have here. So I want to explain here what we have, and then it'll take him a few seconds or so to get zoomed in on the circuit board so you can see what we have there. But I wanted to explain here. So what we need is a light bulb. So I've got my little fancy light bulb here, and it needs to be connected to the side with switch B. So that's right here. We've got a light bulb connected to the B position, and then it needs to go around and it has to be connected to one side of the capacitor. Now I forgot to label this. This has to be plus and that has to be minus. And your capacitor, oh, we'll see it in a minute, but it's a green round thing about so big. And it has two black lines next to one of the posts, and that's the negative side of the capacitor. We're going to see later when you use other capacitors, some have a positive and negative indicated and some don't. The ones that have the plus and minus, they're called electrolytic, and they just need to have the negative side connected to the negative. On other kinds of capacitors, it doesn't matter which way you connect them. Okay, so we have to connect from our light bulb around to the negative side of the capacitor. So we've got the light bulb connected to the negative side of the capacitor. Now, I'm going to go ahead, yes, with this part. So then from the other side of the capacitor, we need to connect to the middle of the switch. So I chose to put it into this row. It could be this row or this row. Now, as far as looking at all these lines, from here, this is a short wire that's stripped at both ends, so it'll fit into the circuit board. And then these things that have this little fat black part at the end, those are the double alligator clips, and I think you have 4 of those. So we have a double alligator that goes from here to the light bulb, one that goes from the other side of the light bulb to the capacitor, and then we have one from the plus side of the capacitor to another little wire that's been stripped and put into the circuit board. And then starting on the other side, from the A side, which is over here, we're going to go to the light bulb. So I'm using a short stripped wire and then a double alligator clip to connect to the light bulb. And then from the light bulb, we're going over to the positive 15 volt position. And notice this looks a little different. So this is a wire that is, it's one of the ones that you use in one of the meters. So that you can, the banana plug you can plug into here, and then the clip that's on the other end you can clip to the light bulb. And then the only other thing that we're missing is from the negative side of the capacitor around to the negative of the battery, which is our ground. So we're going to use the other wire that is a banana plug into here, and then up here using the alligator clip to connect to the power supply. Now, one thing that's important is that you turn on the circuit board, adjust the voltage to 4 volts, and then turn it off. And remove the meter. You need to use the meter to set it at 4 volts. It doesn't have to be 4 exactly, but it shouldn't be very much more than 4, or you might burn out the light bulb. So after you set it to 4 volts, which is what you should do to begin with, and then remove the meter, then you can take the leads out of the meter and then actually use them here and here. So what's going to happen as you read through and kind of work through this, it's going to ask you a question. So what do you think will happen when the switch is moved to this position? And you may know or you may not know. So, and that's the whole idea. It's a prediction, or a what do you think? And when we look at the circuit board, I'm going to go through and show you to make sure you can see how everything's connected. But I'm not going to do it because I don't want you to see what happens here. I want you to see what happens when you actually do it. But I want to make sure that that you have things connected correctly. Okay, so we have this. The general idea is we're going to move the switch to position A, see what happens, and then we'll move the switch to position B and see what happens. You're going to start out with number 41 bulbs, and the 41, I think you figured this out by now if you've done like some of the first lessons, because you had to use a light bulb there. The number is stamped on the side of the metal casing. So you should use 41 here and a 41 here. So you'll do that and answer the questions, kind of see what happens. And then the next part is going to be after you've moved the switch to position A, you're going to take out the 41 and put in a number 48, and then move the switch over there and then see what happens and see how that compares to what happened with the 41. So that's kind of the general idea. Now, we're also, I'm going to show you on the circuit board in just a minute. Actually, I think, Adrian, why don't you go ahead and get zoomed in on that, and I'll do a little bit more talking here. So what we're going to do is, after we see what happens, it does ask you to describe what you think is actually happening in the circuit. Like if you could be a little, I don't know what, but if you could watch electrons moving around in the circuit, what would you actually see? And there's a question in there for you to describe, and you might want to, if you have a good idea of what's happening, you could go ahead and write something. But if you would like, then you could watch the second part of the video, because after I do this, then we're going to stop, and then we'll start another part where I actually go through and explain what all has been happening. And it's kind of important that you understand like the details of what is actually happening. This will be relevant to a couple of the lessons in the AC circuits toward the end of that section. Okay. So you have this?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm going to do now is show you here the circuit, and I think you can hopefully be able to see most of the wires. I'm going to start with the power supply. The black and the yellow are the positive voltage with the ground, and this is where you'll want to use probably actually these wires connected to the voltmeter and set the voltage. Remember, this is the knob here that sets the voltage to about 4 volts, and then you can remove the meter, and you won't need the meter anymore in this. So from the ground, I have over here, if you follow this black wire around, This green thing is the capacitor. And notice that on the other side, this side here, there are two black lines, and that's the negative side. So the ground needs to go to the negative side, and then also the negative side is going to go, if you follow this one around here, it's going to go to one side of a light bulb. This is a number 41. And from the other side of the light bulb, we come up here, and this needs to be connected to the side that goes to position B. Actually, I can move this. I purposefully have left my circuit board off so that I can show you here without accidentally showing you something. So there's a little knob sticking up here, and you can move that. You can slide it. It's a little slider. So if it's slid up here, then it's in position B. So I've connected to a wire here that is in the holes in that row. Okay, now from the positive side of the capacitor, which is the other one, we go over and we have to be connected to the middle of the switch. So this is where there really should be another white line that goes from this middle section here over to the middle of this switch. Actually, I'm going to turn this around so you can see. From here over to here. And it is connected underneath because the circuit works, but they just didn't get it printed on here. So I've connected from the positive to one of the little wires that will go into the hole here, and I've got it connected into one of these that matches this one of these center sections. It doesn't matter which row you go into as long as it matches one or the other of these. Okay, then, where's this wire coming? Oh, then from the positive side of the power supply, we've got the wire that goes around to one side of another light bulb, and then from the other side of the light bulb, that comes up and goes to the side that is over here that goes to position A, so that if the slider is moved to this other position, it'll make a connection to position A. Okay, so try to make sure you've got things connected. And I guess one hint is, if you think nothing happens, that's not the right answer. So something will happen. And when you're doing this, if you're not really sure if what you're seeing is what you're supposed to see, it's perfectly fine to call me and let me know, and I'll tell you what you're supposed to see. Now, this is one of the cases where you will have it at position B, and then you need to change the light bulb that's over, well, in position B, I think this is the right one, and take it out, put a 48 in here. And in the meantime, I think you will, or maybe you have moved it to position A. Actually, make sure you read the instructions there, it tells you that. So if you have it at position A, again, then you will see what happened with this bulb, and while it's over in this position, then you can change this one from a 41 to a 48 and then move the switch to position B, so then you can see what happens to that one. You may need to do that a couple of times before you can answer the questions. It's perfectly fine to move the switch back and forth. I guess one hint would be, if you decide you need to move it back to the other position, wait till everything has happened that's going to happen. I'm not going to say much more than that, but you need to wait till it does whatever it's going to do before you move the switch. Okay, so after you've done this, then you can answer the questions. I think we're going to stop now, and I will erase the board and set up for the second part of the video.